Welcome to Withdraw Consent. I'm Victor. This is Jack. So today we're going to talk about the Hart-Celler Act, why it's important, and the impact it's had on us, on the country.
Right. Why we're getting close to not being a majority white nation.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is one act. Now, it's 1965. I'm going to give you a super brief history, like abbreviated history of immigration law in the United States. Okay? I'm just going to run through them really fast to try to show you that they did not want the Hart-Celler Act of 1965. No Americans at any time wanted it, including the ones who were being lied to at the present time in 1965. And so I'm going to show you how we got there. Okay? So it starts with 1790 Naturalization Act. This is the one you've talked about before. The law provides that free white persons, who have resided in the United States for at least 2 years may be granted citizenship so long as they demonstrate good moral character and swear allegiance to the Constitution. Children under 21 also become citizens. Okay, that's a pretty good one, right?
Yeah.
Right? So that's where we started in 1790. 1798, they did Alien and Sedition Acts, and they said they modified the previous one, said now you have to do 14 years of residence and be moral character. You know, those got, so 1798, they got repealed in 1802, or they were allowed to expire. So now we're going 1802, we're going all the way to 1882. Wow. 80 years, we're now post-Civil War. Immigration Act of 1882, among other things, it said that anyone deemed a, quote, convict, lunatic, idiot, or person unable to take care of himself or herself without becoming a public charge, end quote, shall not be allowed to land. Okay. So we're still at the 1790 rules, and now we're just restricting people. We want less bad people.
So that wasn't even about citizenship. That was just you're not even allowed to step on the soil.
Right, because formerly those types of people could land. They could just never qualify for citizenship. Okay. So now they can't.
So it's more
land.
restrictive. Okay.
Same year, 1882, Chinese Exclusion Act. Not too relevant, so we're going to skip it. 1888, the Scott Act, which is more Chinese exclusion. We're going to skip it. 1891, law makes it a crime to bring into the U.S. any non-citizen not lawfully entitled to enter. So now it's the bringer, the coyote, the ship captain. You can't even pick somebody up over there if you think he's a lunatic, idiot, or do you know what I'm saying?
Can't take care of himself.
Because it's a crime for you to try to bring him over.
Why are we skipping the Chinese ones?
I mean, okay, I get where you're going with this.
Yeah.
I get where you're going with this. But they're just so based on specific circumstances going on at the time. We were bringing Chinese over to build the railroads, but then we also didn't want them here. Okay. So they did things like they brought 50,000 Chinese, no women. You know what I mean? But they had miscegenation laws, so they couldn't have our women. So you're just going to die off. It's the same thing with the Arabs who took the black slaves out of Africa, but then they neutered them all. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're right. Okay, maybe I should have done more of that. I'm just trying to make it quick.
Yeah.
Okay. 1892, 1 year later, more Chinese exclusion legislation. Sorry. 1917 Immigration Act creates an Asiatic barred zone. So none from these Asian countries, you know?
Oh, at all?
Yeah, they're really focused on this. I should have.
And again, this isn't citizenship. This is just they're not allowed to come at all.
Yeah.
And that's almost post-World War I.
1917, yeah.
Okay,
so 1921. So this is where we're going to get into the good ones now. Where now people realize, oh, this is not working out. This is not the color of the country that we want. You know what I mean?
Okay.
We want to lock our guns in our trucks, you know, down the road from this. 1921, called the Emergency Quota Act. You got to listen closely. Limits the number of immigrants of each nationality allowed to immigrate to the United States each year to 3% of the number of foreign-born persons of that nationality present in the United States as of the 1910 census.
Okay.
So 1921, you look back at the 1910 census, don't care who's here, just care who's foreign-born. Of them, you could do 3% of the number of each group.
Can come over. Okay.
Can come over. Okay. 3 years later, they realized that was trash. We need to go harder. So they're passing these laws. They're arguing them in Congress, you know. 3 years later, 1924, National Origins Act, or the Johnson-Reed Act, right? Now they changed the 3% to 2%, and they changed the 1910 to 1890. So go back 20 more years in the census and down a third on the percentages, right? So this was done to discriminate against Southern and Eastern Europeans.
Okay.
Who had done well in 1910, did less good in 1890. Okay, I'm just doing all immigration law. This one's not really that important. 1942, Bracero Agreement allows Mexican nationals temporary work visas for agricultural work. It was extended in 1949, 1951, and continued in some form till 1964. These are migrant workers coming up to California. They leave. Temporary work visas, 1942 Magnuson Act repeals the Chinese Exclusion Acts. So it's 42 during the war. Okay, well, it depends. 1945, the War Bride Act gives citizenship to spouses and children of World War II honorably discharged soldiers.
Okay.
So you're honorably discharged. Anybody you married, wife and kids, they all get citizenship. Okay, the Displaced Persons Act of 1948 allowed 200,000 individuals displaced from their homelands to immigrate to the U.S. 15,000 already here get citizenship, right? That's 200 can come, 15 already here. Truman signs it reluctantly, concerned that it will exclude many Jewish refugees.
Okay.
It did. It really did. It was basically they kind of signed the act so that they could bring over a bunch of Jews, but nobody wanted any Jews here. So all the people in the government just worked it so that, you know what I'm saying? Just worked it so as few Jews as possible can. Okay, 1952, the Immigration and Nationality Act, or the McCarran-Walter Act, preserves the national quota system, right?
Yeah.
Adds Asians to it, which controversial move. Increases enforcements of individuals found inadmissible.
Okay.
So they kept the quota act. You can bring some Asians, but we need more enforcement of getting the people out who shouldn't be here. So that was the trade they gave. You know what I mean? I don't know which side was on which side, but I can see them haggling that, So the Refugee Relief Act of 1953 gave 205,000 non-quota immigrants fleeing persecution or expelled from homes in Europe. Okay? That's probably from the communist era.
Right.
1962, JFK signs the Migration and Refugee Assistance Act of 1962, which allows people who have fled their homes due to persecution to immigrate, mainly Cubans. That's a very specific subject. Here we go. The 1965 Immigration and Nationality Act, also known as the Hart-Celler Act, signed by Lyndon B. Johnson, who we're going to make a video about. He's one of the worst people. He's a villain. It's going to be in the villain series. He's a villain. Spoiler. October 3rd, 1965 took effect June 30th, 1968. The law abolished the national origins formula, which is the quota stuff, which had been the basis of the United States immigration law since the 1920s. This national origins formula had set quotas on what percentage of immigrants could immigrate every year from which country, and it heavily favored Western Europeans. It was just for Western Europeans. Okay, whatever. Though the American people were promised that this act would not change the ethnic makeup of their country, the direct result of this act was for America to go from people of European descent comprising 88.6% of the population in the 1960 census to those identifying as white alone, meaning that they did not also claim any other ethnicities, to 61.6% of the population in the 2020 census. Right now, it's 56.3%, I believe.
Wow.
So from 88.6 in the 1960 census, which was 5 years before the act was signed, 88.6, we're at 56.3, or 61.6 in the 2020 census.
So 3 generations-ish, if you're doing 20 years per generation. Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah. And so they literally knew what they were doing because they pitched this as, it's not going to change the ethnic makeup of the country. I don't know how you say that when you're getting rid of the origins thing that's only made to protect the ethnic makeup of the country.
Yeah, unless no one's looking into it. And you just...
Like the people back then were as stupid as they are now. It has some good sports ball to watch.
Right. Or it's been a certain way for so long. Why would they... Maybe it was just unfathomable. Why would you ruin this?
That's an interesting idea, too.
Maybe this is even better for us than what we've had.
Maybe there was a guy named Jack and Victor who warned them. They literally stood on soapboxes with funny pants on, and yelled about this. And they're like, Jack and Victor, you idiots,
Right.
So this is where we're at.
Okay.
And so basically, we referred to this a lot in a lot of different episodes. A lot, like a handful, but we never made a video on it,
Sure.
And so basically, I'm just going to reiterate my position.
Mm-hmm.
My position is that if the government makes a law in defiance of the will of the American or the people of that country, it's illegitimate.
It should be, right?
It's just illegitimate, So like if they were to draft you to go to Ukraine or Gaza or something, I would defy it. I would fight so that my kids wouldn't. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And I wouldn't have a qualm of conscience for
Right.
doing so, in my opinion. So in my opinion, I would be more extreme than Adolf Hitler himself. What? Adolf Hitler was not extreme enough to force deport people from the Greater Reich. Mm-hmm. He never forced a Jew to move out. He tried to encourage them to move out. He made the transfer agreement. We're going to make a whole episode on that. A plan so that they could get Zionism, go back to Israel. You know what I mean? But he was not extreme enough to force a person out. I say, if you were not eligible prior to 1965, you don't come in. You don't stay.
Before the illegitimate
law.
Right.
If you were eligible before that, if you would have been eligible before that, can't enforce quotas. You know what I mean? So just if you were, you're in, you know?
Yeah.
And then, of course, illegal immigration. Anyways, but I would treat those people very nicely.
The ones that are on their way out.
Yeah. Like a Patrick Bet-David.
Okay.
Love this dude. Love this dude. Right?
Yeah.
And he's pro-America. And he's like, I'm living the American dream. You all should too. I don't know what's wrong. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I love you, brother. But you got to go and out. You take all of your money and stuff. Nobody's going to steal your car. Sure. You know what I'm saying? You're here illegally. It's a totally different story. Could care less if you have a shirt on your back.
I feel like it's an Asian lady who says that once white people wake up, she just wants to be on the last
Savannah.
Yeah. Run through that. I think
that's funny. So she was on. I can't remember the show. I'll put it on the screen. But it was with Elijah Schaefer. I can't remember his show. And then she was on there, and she's like, she's like she understands the whole situation in the country, and she's fine with it going the way that Jack and Victor want it to go, as long as she's just on the very last boat.
Yeah, she wants to enjoy it as long as possible.
Yeah, and it's I appreciate
because it's not an unreasonable stance,
right? Yeah, and if I were in China, whether I were a laborer or I was a 9-figure dude like Patrick Bet-David, and then the Chinese look at me and they're like, "Go." Yeah. I'd be like, "Okay,
I get it.
You got me. You got me.
Yeah.
Can I take my stuff? Did you come here legally? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, take your stuff. Okay, cool.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyways, that's what I got. What do you think you got new?
Yeah, no, I'm totally on board with your stance, and it's insane that we let this happen, and yeah, it's cool thinking of a future where this has been fixed.
Yeah, I want to make shirts. I can't figure out how to do it yet, but I want to do something related to 1965, and then like a some type of symbol. Okay. It's like 1965, so you only know if you know. Okay. But then it says something inflammatory on the back about deportations or something. Okay. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it's like a whole line of 1965 shirts. The heck are you talking about? You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Hart-Celler Act. You know?
Yep.
I'm also a fan of... Oh, never mind. I shouldn't even say it. I won't say it this time.
Maybe another time. All right. So... hopefully you enjoyed this video, learned a little something, and can use this as reference when you forget what we're talking about when it comes to immigration. And hopefully we'll see you next time.